Call to order this September 6th, 2025 special meeting of the Planning and Transportation Commission our retreat. Mr. Devetta, could we call the roll?
Yes, Chair Aiken,
Here.
Vice Chair Chang,
Here.
Commissioner Hickman,
Here.
Commissioner James,
Here.
Commissioner G,
Here.
Commissioner Peterson,
He'll be coming late.
Commissioner Templeton.
Here.
For the record, we have a quorum.
Thank you. So do we have any public comment for items not on?
Through the chair, at the moment, we have no request to speak and no raised hands, through all of it.
Assistant Director, do we have any agenda change information?
No agenda changes.
I guess it's time for our simple discussion.
Yes, good morning. And thank you all for joining us in this different location and different timing for our first retreat in a number of years. And so we've set up the topic of this kind of broadly so that we can touch on ideas. So it's a discussion of the commission purpose and other topics related to meeting management, administration, and related functions. And so we'll share just a couple slides here. Next slide. And so in the staff report, we did provide some background information, just some of the rules and regulations that we should all have a common understanding. The new commissioners and those who have been on the commission for a few years, always good to have a reminder of the basis for the work that we do. In addition to what was provided in the staff report, the chair has also asked me to compile a list of online resources and other resources that might be useful to commissioners. Some of those you already received as part of your orientation, but I would welcome any suggestions for other things. This is my list so far that we've pulled together. Also in the staff report, I mentioned the idea for future retreats. Retreats that would allow us to dig in on topics of interest, varying topics under transportation and housing, for example. Again, we would welcome suggestions, ideas under that. For today's discussion, we can go to the next slide. So we kept it broad on purpose because really an overall conversation about to do the work that we do, we need to understand the basis of that work and have some common goals, even when we have different opinions on individual topics. And so working towards that today, we can talk about the elements listed in the staff report. First, though, as city staff, as the liaison to the PTC, I wanted to frame a little bit of context for the discussion. I'm sure you've all heard complaints about the Palo Alto process, right? And there have been efforts over the years to try and work to reduce the difficulties of that while maintaining the benefits of the process. And the Planning and Transportation Commission, of course, is an important part of that. To many, it's an impediment to change and improvements, but it also provides important benefits to the community. So over the years, there have been efforts to try and reduce it. One of those things is reducing the types of things that come automatically to a public hearing. In recent years, a lot of that's been surrounding housing. That if it's meeting the rules, then it's something that just gets approved by the director, doesn't need to come to a public hearing. And so what that means is the work that you all do, the items that you see are the unusual asks, the exceptions, the contentious projects and changes that are proposed through code changes, through area plans, through transportation plans. And so that means that you're given questions to resolve that usually don't have clear answers. Right? And so that leads to some of our meetings where it takes a while to work through. But even with those difficult, contentious, or complicated topics, we do need to aspire to not impede the process, right? The overall goal really is to be making a recommendation to council. To do that, to efficiently use the limited time that we have in meetings. To, from a staff perspective, I hope the goal of helping the professional staff and experts who are here to support you provide you the information that you need to do the work that you're doing, given an understanding of the limits of the resources that we have, time and technology, of course. And so we can talk through ideas of questions in advance, how to provide that information back to the questioner or maybe to the commission as a whole in advance. And staff is continuously trying to learn from past meetings about how we can provide information better or what type of information is useful. And then as we are then going through the information, making sure that there is a balance and an understanding of the information received from different sources, because of course you receive public comments from those who are neighbors, from those who have experience or expertise or just strong interest in advocacy in a topic, versus those who aren't in the room. And then tying all of that back to the purpose, the findings, the basis for the decision that you're making a recommendation. So, so we've got these items here, just kind of high level categories to get you started thinking. The purpose of recommendation to council. The idea that alignment with council is something that's worth aspiring to, but maybe not total, right? You're each bringing a different perspective and you dig into things more deeply than council has time to. And so, as appropriate. What's the purpose of the PTC liaison? That's something that I think has changed over the years. And then how can staff support the liaison? A conversation before the meeting, a heads up of when things are scheduled, as we try to do at the beginning of each hearing, but maybe individually reaching out ideas for that. And then the roles of individual commissioners. And then for meeting management, thinking about the structure. As I observe meetings and the experience that I've had with previous boards and commissions, one of the things that is difficult is the structure that we have to work with. There are some things that are flexible and there are other things that aren't. Having to ask questions up front can sometimes lead to individual commissioners trying to solve the things that they're wrestling with on their own, limiting the ability to solve those as a group, right? And so thinking about the kinds of questions, clarification up front, and how to shift into discussion later to say, this is a concern, this is something I identified. Can we see if we can work together to solve that concern? Or, asking, working with staff to solve those concerns. Ideas for efficiency in meeting, of course. Council was wrestling with that as well. They had it as an agenda item to discuss recently. They use time limits for each time anybody's speaking, which, can be kind of heavy-handed, but sometimes is a good reminder of, okay, I've been going on too long. There are also a recognition of different types of discussion items. So when you think about the items that we've presented, we've got 3 agenda items for you next week, for example. But the first 2 of those are ones where it's the first time you're seeing it. It's really, the goal is to get initial ideas. Maybe in something like that, it's 1 or 2 rounds of individual comments, no need for consensus, and then we can move on, right? So there are different ways to kind of set up the discussion for different types. And then I included here also the use of technology during meetings. Is there support we can provide with what we have available, understanding how to use it. And then And then I'll conclude with this last item, interactions and roles between commissioners, staff, and the public. My goal is staff to support you and to work with you and to make sure that you have the information you need. But also bringing my professional experience to try and guide the discussion when appropriate. And so I would emphasize the importance of respect in between all of these different groups who are involved in the work that we do, and how that can build trust rather than contention and conflict, and the value of that. And I think on that point, I'll pass it back to the chair to talk about how you'd like to organize this discussion. Or to open up to a discussion with the group as to how to organize this discussion.
That's much more likely. Yeah, I did consider a number of issues that we might discuss today. Roughly that includes skill development versus individually. There are several things that you suggested there. Mentoring both within the commission and with outside groups who have information and perspectives that you could use. I have a topic here that I labeled work for, but the new commissioners have seen my suggestions for ways to make yourself more effective or more efficient. But I didn't pass those along to anyone else because I didn't think you needed them. But I can certainly do so if you're interested. And then most of the rest dovetails with what the zoner has already said. The only other thing on my list that's major is cooperation with other boards and commissions. So I have rather more details on that, but I don't want to jump the gun and get into the thing. So how do we organize this discussion? We have my inclination at the moment is to take the outline that Ms. Arbor has provided and then inject more details as we discuss. Does anyone have a preference on those ends?
I would love to see us pick what the maybe top one or two issues from first and like start with the ones that have the most common interest. I don't know. I mean, is there something magic about the order?
No.
Yeah, so that might be a good place to start because I think even just hearing the list was kind of getting the juices flowing in my brain.
And
Yeah, we do only have 2 hours.
through the chair, before we continue, we are using the owl for the microphone. We do have Albert Yang online joining us in case there are any points of process or history or legal questions that come up. He is having a little hard time hearing you.
I also.
And so if you could try and project a little bit, that should be helpful.
Also don't close the door because the smell in here is making
Pretty-
me nauseous.
So it's making me cough.
Great.
It's yeah.
But perhaps we could move that table up this way since.
Yeah.
Since Sam is saying very little.
It can be
And
forced.
most of the dialogue is,
We also could rearrange
yeah,
the tables.
let's try this first and then get a.
Yeah.
Mr. Yang.
And I will note that we don't have anyone else online, and so,
Do we need to ask for public comment, like officially?
So I am for the record stating that there are no members of the public joining us, and so no need to the public comment on this item.
And so since this is a retreat, we're just jumping in. Is that like, I don't know how, I've never been to a PTC retreat.
Nor have I, so I'm fine with the idea. Of
I have. Am I the only one?
Me running one.
Yeah, you might be the only.
Was it
Billy, it was before you.
your first year?
Yeah.
Yeah, so.
So you were the only one of us who attended one for you?
Who knows the history and what's been done before? I would guess that Albert probably as well. But also, that being said, I think knowing how it's been done before might be helpful, but also,
It doesn't
how
matter.
does it work for this group?
Yeah, exactly.
Are we missing anything important?
I don't think that one I attended was model.
All right, so let's
That's right.
build a model.
There were some characters on the board, on the commission at that time. I remember hearing about that retreat when
Yeah.
I joined the next year.
Yeah.
Or some,
So lessons learned from that retreat. then.
I think we have an excellent group here today, and I think I'd like to hear from all of us on the items that were brought up.
Yeah, I do like, can we be informal and use first names today, or should we be?
I'm cool with that.
That would be great.
Something like that.
Great. So I did like Carrie's idea of taking this list as augmented, for example, Alan's idea of the collaboration with other boards. I thought that's sort of a 1E, part of the PTC purpose rather than our meeting management. So, but I like Carrie's idea of are there a couple of these we want to start with that are really resonating with us? For me, one of them brought up by Jennifer is the efficiency. Really, how we get through items in our meeting. So that, we're respectful of everybody's time and actually we get to a result without getting to the point where we're too tired to get to a result. So that's one that I'm particularly interested in talking about 2B.
And as Jennifer knows, one of the items on my list was use of technology. So I'd like to see if there's some low hanging fruit we can grab there. To use.
Maybe pretty quick.
That's one I'd like to discuss if we can kind of knock it out in 10 minutes. Just so that, because I feel like we've used up at least 10 minutes in the last several PTC meetings.
May want to wait to have that conversation.
That's fine too. So, but if we can,
But yes,
Kinda
I
like
think
a
we should
lot.
have it
yeah, and we can decide what our norms are for how we want to do that.
minus 2D.
2D.
Plus one for other boards and commissions for me.
Yeah, same. One thing I guess maybe it's related to C is how we share data, like information amongst each other. I remember specifically a diagram that Alan presented at a meeting that then we spent a lot of time discussing about how is the data correct and like all these questions that maybe if there's something that we want to bring up for exhibit, like how do we do that? Because there's also this discussion, like staff is professionally trained to be able to validate and say, hey, like, is the thing that I just hacked together make sense? So that there's like some kind of process amongst commissioner
So
creating.
is that 2D for you, Kevin?
I guess, yeah,
I mean, it ties into the questions of staff in advance or
yeah.
how
Yeah,
to share.
categories here.
Yeah.
Yeah.
As much of this does. And
Oh,
I'm interested in all this stuff. It's
which one do you want to talk about
It's
first?
all sort of new to me. Yeah, no, I'm super flexible, honestly. I think we could touch on all of this.
All right, Sharon. You get to choose. Looks like 1D and 2B, C, and D.
Is it 1E?
1E.
E.
Yeah.
Oh, I don't know what's 1E.
E is
That's the-
off the menu collaboration with other boards and commissions.
Well, I thought you said that was
Correct.
under role.
Oh, literally under D. Well, that's my brain was.
All right. Well,
Physically listed
Physically,
under.
right.
I see,
Invisible,
not included in.
right.
I
So I
see.
heard a great deal of interest in the other boards and commissions.
Lot.
item. And since that's one of the few I actually prepared for, I can throw out some additional information. More loudly so that Albert can hear me. So the genesis of this for me is that I was approached by Peter Balde and David Hirsch from the Architectural Review Board to try and make sure that projects that are reviewed by both commissions are that we deal efficiently with the exceptions that are being requested and the concerns that are likely to arise, so that the applicants are fully prepared and the meetings could go more quickly.
Where? With us?
So that's first thing on the list. To minimize the Brown Act issues, it makes sense to do all of this through staff. So probably what David and I discussed was the form this would take would be an ad hoc from each of the commissions working with Jennifer to get as early access as possible to proposals, to highlight now I'm going to go through a long list here, but please feel free to comment or interrupt. To identify the requested exceptions for, as Jennifer said earlier, the projects that come to us tend to be the ones that have exceptions in one respect to another. So let's identify those. Highlight those that might be hotspots in hearings. And just an example list the setbacks, special setbacks, daylight lanes, parking within the project, parking nearby the project, traffic circulation nearby the project. Those are the sorts of things that are likely to generate discussion. And the goal would be to make sure the applicants are prepared to justify the exceptions that they're requesting. So they have a rationale that they can give to us and to the ARB. Suggest alternatives that staff may want to discuss with the applicants. In some cases, those will come to mind.
I can't hear anything you're saying. I'm so sorry. Could you please speak?
Do you want to shift over just?
Well, I mean,
Maybe you can scoot the table this way.
or maybe he could speak up. That's what I asked for. It's okay if he wants to continue whispering. I can't hear you very well over here.
Sorry, this is a natural problem.
Yeah, that's why I
Even-
cleaned up. I was like, I know he's not doing it. So,
Even Gennady classified me as soft spoken.
oh,
Um,
I can hear you now. Thank you.
Good. I will try to keep it up as long as my voice lasts. So the third thing that we would ask staff to discuss with the applicants would be long-term enforceable mitigations for matters that can't be resolved in the LOA. And ultimately, the goal here is to create a sort of checklist that could be used by staff to talk to applicants so that the personal involvement of the ad hocs from the two commissions would no longer be needed.
We haven't agreed on ad hocs, but go on. This is the idea that they, yeah.
Yeah, this is just what David and I have been discussing. So Yingxi, who's currently chair of the ARB, and I have met, and we have talked already in much less detail than I've just given you. So what I expect would be the next step would be to have Yingxi and you and me go over this, given that how we're informed by the discussion here, and see where that goes. So you now have all the details. That's the extent to which this idea has been explored so far. Carrie?
I really like the idea of the chairs meeting with staff and asking staff what they need. I'm not sure what the purpose of the ad hocs would be. In my experience of using ad hocs and being part of ad hocs on this committee and not being part of some other ad hocs, is a lot of really important discussion happens behind the scenes and is reported poorly and incompletely. And then we have to have it all again, or we have some commissioners who are like, we've already discussed it, we don't need to talk about it. And so it's a bit of a frustration because that as we've discussed today and other times, that the conversations we have are really important. So I'm not sure about having ad hocs and that kind of thing. However, I really agree that I want staff to bring those topics forward that you listed. Like, here's the problems, here's what we're anticipating, make sure the same information is going to both commissions. That I really like that idea.
Okay, the suggestion for the ad hoc, I think, was driven by two things. One, making sure that the load gets shared, because potentially there are a lot of projects. And the other is sometimes individual commission members have expertise that the chair doesn't have. And so occasionally there's a fit that makes sense.
But that's why we all need to hear from that person for exactly that reason.
So the unknown here is how much information flows back to the commission. And that's partly a Brown Act issue. So we have to be careful that the information flow is legally acceptable
It's not Brown Act, it's on the dais.
as. No, it's the earlier phase that I'm concerned about. So it can't be as interactive as we might like to solve the problem. But there is still opportunity to, at the very least, make sure that the applicant knows what are the issues that are likely to be of concern to both boards, to both commissions.
And do you think that we're the right people to identify that, or staff? Because my feeling is probably staff. I don't know what you're thinking.
Yeah, David and I came to the conclusion that what we needed to do was make sure staff knew.
Mhm.
And
That certain issues would be hot button
would be
issues
hot
for
button
this,
issues.
for a particular.
That's
project.
right. So the
Why do we
interaction
get that? We can just tell them.
to share the load. Well, this is before a project comes before the commission as a whole. So it's got to be some subset of us talking to only to staff.
That doesn't make any sense.
So I think that if I'm understanding, at every meeting, we get a heads up, this is coming in 2 weeks or 4 weeks. And ARB, for example, gets the same thing probably, right? And so this is an opportunity for the chairs to sort of look at those that are on the horizon in advance and sort of mentally ask or discuss. Two chairs talk about, is this one where this ad hoc or whatever structure is going to be useful so that we can have a conversation with staff before it actually comes to us in 2 or 4 weeks, and make sure that when it comes to us, it's got these pieces in place. Is that the concept?
Yeah.
I think it's even earlier than that,
Earlier than that,
because
yes.
like, okay, let's take an example, 660 University, this is the one at the corner of University and Middlefield.
Maybe we should not talk about specifics.
Okay, but we saw, I'm not gonna talk about specifics, we saw many different iterations of that work, and my understanding is that every time something gets redone, well, like in 2 to 4 weeks, you can't redo something that completely changes the whole building and the whole, so I think, is it earlier? So is it way, way, way earlier before like a
It's as early as staff gets.
wind of a project or?
Well,
Application.
So
So we should not, as commissioners, be discussing projects that are agendized or about to be agendized. It's not legal. We need to not be making ad hocs to talk about things we're not allowed to talk.
Right, let's separate two issues.
Okay.
One is the ad hoc versus chair participation.
I do think the chair
So-
can talk about anything they want to talk about with staff, and so can the rest of us.
Okay, so we'll separate those two issues. But let me try and make a generic example.
Thank you, that will help. And just not, I don't get it.
Right. So, special setbacks that exist for transportation projects. There are a bunch of them throughout the city, and they affect large numbers of projects that are about to be proposed or that are being considered. So, special setbacks are generally not of concern to the ARB for aesthetic reasons. Special setbacks are of concern to us for transportation reasons. So an applicant who goes to the ARB and says, we would like to use our special setback for this purpose, will receive no pushback. And
Nor
then,
should they, because they're the ARB.
and then come to the PTC where they may receive pushback. So what I would like to do is, and I think what David has in mind as well, is for us to communicate to staff, this is likely to be an area of contention. So please talk to the applicants so that they are prepared to deal with this
I think it's important.
in the two different ways that they are going to have to at the two different commissions. But what we don't want is to have an applicant think that this is a thing which passed the ARB and therefore is no longer of concern.
Yeah,
So
I mean,
up front, they need to be.
I agree, I'm gonna do a time check. Like, I don't know what more we want to say about this, but I would love to hear from other people. I know I've talked a lot, so what do you guys think?
If I may jump in briefly with what I've heard, and some thoughts from a staff perspective. What I'm hearing is an interest in sharing, from maybe a chair participation perspective, a first look at projects when they first come in and going through their first review with staff to identify some of these issues. Also, I think you mentioned the idea of using that as a way of compiling a list so that maybe this isn't something that goes on ever, but is something that is developed. I might add to that the idea that alternatively, it could be based on the projects you have seen during your time on the PTC and ARB members. Maybe this is a future retreat or even joint retreat discussion.
What you didn't capture, that was very, I think, good about what we have said. What is not included in that is how much staff is the one that knows, because you're the people interacting with these. Like, you create the list and you can tell, like, that's not something that needs, I mean, to your point about reserving our time. This is not something that really is a surprise. You guys always know, and you can warn the other chairs.
Thank you. Thank you. And I do see that as part of my role and responsibility, and why I do attend all PTC, ARB, and HRB meetings. So that as I've been with the city for a year now, I am building a sense of what are the hot button issues. There were some I already could predict, other ones that I'm developing, so that as I'm reviewing all of those staff reports, as I'm guiding our current planning manager, for example, and she's leading her team, that they identify those things early.
And to the chair's point, I think all of us can participate in this in saying, when we're reading the packet, adding a little check mark or a note at the top that says during the commission, say this, please add this to the list, Ms. Arm, right? Like, we can do that. Because then the list will build itself
Oh,
together.
yes and no.
Okay.
Yes, that process should go on.
Yeah.
Is that the way to jumpstart what's going on? That's where I think, at least with us and the ARB, I think we need to push things a little bit initially.
And you can.
So, well, that's the process that's being discussed.
I would love to get to some of these other things. We're
Yeah.
So,
Let me just say, I'm open to trying this. I'm not candidly seeing the need for it. The ARB, just use the ARB PTC example, we have different roles. And a lot of projects only come to one or the other. We're talking about the ones that are gonna come to both,
Well,
right? Or any other pair of PTC paired with somebody else, historic, whatever. I think every applicant, staff has to figure out which commissions every application, depending on its nature, has to go through. And I think staff's obligation, and I suspect they do it, to explain, you're gonna have to go to both ARB and PTC, and they have different roles. Maybe it could be made a little more clear to them, what those different roles are. I haven't been in the room when those conversations occur, so that somebody doesn't come out of ARB meeting, think, I've got my setback set, when really that's a PTC issue that the ARB, it's not an ARB issue, so they glossed over it. Or it could be, and it's possible, there are overlapping areas. So having said that, I'm open to trying this. My concern is staff time. You know, we hear in many of our meetings when we have ideas about some other thing that it would be nice to have about a particular item, that there are staff time and budget issues. And so if I think as we think about adding this to staff's plate, we have to think about what other things we might want to put on the plate and then prioritize those.
what does staff, I'm curious, like, what does staff think of this?
I like the recognition that staff is already working to try and do some of this work. And I would add that sometimes even when the suggestion gets made, that justification be provided for something, that
It doesn't happen, sure.
it's up to the applicant and the effort that they're gonna put into it. And so part of it is you're seeing kind of the end result of that process. I have some concerns about a single commissioner, even if it's the chair, you know, kind of weighing in early, and whether that could potentially be leading them in a direction that then isn't actually the full commission's opinion. But I think it's an interesting thing to consider. I think it also leads to other ideas, like coming up with a checklist of common concerns, that could be something that the commissioners work on. Also, in some cases, having joint ARB PTC meetings is another way of bringing the two together and hearing the different interests.
and we've had joint sessions before, right?
In fact, I am looking into doing one in the next.
That could be a
couple months.
possibility as well.
So there are lots of different possibilities.
I'm all in favor of that. It's just the timing matters.
Absolutely, and it will depend on the type of project. I think on development projects, that probably isn't the best way to do the review. But on some things, the example that's coming to my mind right now is the Coverly plan and the work that they're doing right now. That might be one that we would bring to a joint special session.
Fun.
Yeah, I think it could be a really interesting discussion, and then if a recommendation is needed, it would be done individually, but at the, you know, one to follow together. So what I would recommend to the chair for this discussion today is that there's some really great ideas. And I will note for the record that Commissioner Peterson has joined us. And that it's something that we can continue to think about, as you already have been. If there might be a few more thoughts from other members, but that it might be useful to move on to the next one.
Okay, I just want to add 2 sentences. I'm really in favor of the checklist, but I'm hoping it's not additional work. For example, one thing I like about the way that the finding setup is there's a finding and then there's an explanation. So maybe if there's a way that we just kind of punt this to the developer and it's like, here's the checklist, you have to add an attachment that is like, for each of these things, you explain, and if it's blank, it's blank, right? So there's no staff time involved. And then as long as we kind of during the meeting, we can just say, oh, setbacks, special setbacks, daylight plans, whatever. We just throw them on there and then we just say, hey, like this, our list just keeps growing. And it becomes kind of a natural way to make this minimal staff time, but also we get what we want. And also from our perspective, it's also almost like a cheat sheet, right? It's like, hey, we can flip to Appendix B and see, okay, these are the issues that might come up. And so that I think that might.
The staff is doing that, right?
And they always have the development,
Yeah,
there's that chart, every single project that
Yeah,
has.
and I think like the one thing I'd like to add there is just the explanation subcolumn, like.
That's something that's like
Yeah.
immediately doable, right? I
Right.
mean, it's an ask that you can make of,
Yeah, and if it's blank, like we know why it's blank, right? So as opposed to being buried in like a paragraph somewhere.
And that is something that I have seen with other agencies requesting that the applicant provide the justification for things, and particularly for exceptions.
and to go further to the chair's request, what about having the applicant send the list for both commissions to both commissions, right? In other words, so we can see what their considerations are.
yeah.
Yeah.
And then they're doing the work. What do you think about that?
With the cautionary comment that your work will be a little bit complicated because you'll need to make sure your discussion is focused on what you're finding.
They need to format it nicely.
I mean, for the PC requirements, we also do see the ARB finding as well, so I don't expect it to be.
Well, the question was if the applicant wanted to produce something that was included justifications.
Yeah.
That's important.
Yeah, I do think that's reasonable. I sometimes get hired to prepare draft findings for staff to consider. The county has this elaborate grading, these grading requirements, you have to justify grading. Is it the minimum needed to make this use? And sometimes I write those, I draft variance findings sometimes. And again, they're not locked in, but it's.
Yeah, I mean, we've
So
seen
there are
that,
situations.
seen it in letters
But-
from attorneys, right?
Right, right, but it is a burden on applicants to hire me to do that kind of work. And it is not inexpensive to hire me to do that kind of work. And so we need to, you know,
Right, the final comment,
It is, it's not inexpensive to come back multiple times to the PTC.
that's true.
just so.
Oh, sorry, Reese.
That's a perfect segue. Yeah, the final comment I wanted to make was one of the other goals here is to minimize work for staff and for applicants and those by making sure that things are addressed as early as possible and not repetitively. So.
Mm.
Well, we are talking about staff. Should we move on to the interactions and roles, commissioners, staff, and public?
I think I'm ready to move on. Is everyone else? Oh, okay.
So what are we covering in D? I mean, I understand, I see the words, but I don't understand what it means.
Talk about
Yeah.
Well, I know what Ms. Armour said, and I'm gonna repeat it back through my lens and see if we can all achieve a common understanding. We may not be exactly on the same page, but what do we expect from staff, and how do we deal with that if we're not receiving what we expect? Is that part of it?
I think that is a good component of it. I think the way that I framed it is thinking about how we can all work together, because staff's responsibility, right? We're employees of the city, is to provide you the information you need to be able to make your recommendation to council within the limits that we have in terms of time and technology and resources. And I think that is what your statement is, one of the places that we run into difficulty when staff works to provide the information based on past experience and our technical expertise that we think is important for your discussion and recommendation, and it's missing something or isn't what you're hoping for or expecting. And how do we handle that? Is it something that We talked a little bit about, asking questions ahead of time. Reaching out and talking with staff. And just having a common understanding of what can and can't be.
We're just jumping in today.
Everyone here has ever worked as staff, correct? City or county staff? So I spent time with staff.
I have,
Yes, staff.
Oh, you've spent staff too.
no, I said,
Josh?
other than being a short-term city attorney, I have not spent.
Okay,
time.
I've been a level 3 clerical worker. That's where I got my union membership. I'm still wearing it. I was at the union earlier. Measure A. Everybody support Measure A for
We're
healthcare.
not doing political.
Oh, that's right. It's not political. Anyway, so the staff. As staff, I was the recipient of all Joe Smithian's requests during the creation of the Office of Labor Standards Enforcement. And so Joe doesn't know who I am at the time. He just sees the staff member, the manager who's looking at it, and says, well, I want to see the data set that proves we need this. And I think this is a standard narrative for an elected office, board and a staff. And staff says, okay, we'll provide you that evidence. So we come back and it goes down the chain, and I get the request to produce this data set, which takes me, 3 days, being up all night, all the rest to produce. And we produce it, and of course, then the board, so Joe says, well, I don't trust these. I want to see something I trust. I want to see just 1 week or 1 month, some snapshot. So I go through and I do the whole, the first time I didn't know it was going to come back and ask again. So first time I just went off on Excel. So I think a lot of times when we ask something for staff, that chain reaction where it goes all the way down, there's somebody at the other end that's doing the work, and then comes back working really, really diligently. But sometimes the reason why we're asking for stuff is, Joe, I think, was just opposed to the office. I don't know. He finally voted without the office. But whenever I talk about anything with staff, I'm always imagining, okay, what's the whole network that we're looking at here when we're putting in these requests?
Yeah, I just want to echo that because I've been a transportation consultant. So like the one layer after that is staff will ask the consultant to go and create a budget. So just want to echo that as well. I think that one of the things, just kind of jumping a little bit more deeply into some of the things that I think could be helpful are like for example, the stream side ordinance. I'd never seen the original iteration. And so like doing some kind of comparison that's like, hey, if this item came back, it just would reference like this ordinance has changed significantly from the past, or like just having some maybe the previous iteration of the ordinance to look at, or it's kind of like specifically highlighting could be useful. And then also having a little bit more details about, for example, when it came from pre-screen or ARB, sometimes it gets dissected into like just a couple sentences, but I know it's like because there's a lot there. But I think could be helpful to expand upon specifically if there were certain motions that we passed over to ARB or council direct us to look at specific things, just kind of diving into that a little deeper could be helpful. And then one of the other things that came up at the stream side ordinances, I was curious about the number of properties that were impacted, right? And so having kind of an impact analysis on certain kind of like not project specific, but kind of like larger policies, I think could be helpful. I would have liked to have not had to ask for the number of like the amount of impact that certain ordinances had.
The one immediate pointer that I would give is that all of the staff reports and videos of previous meetings and meeting minutes are available online. So when we can, we definitely will try and provide a summary and stuff from those previous meetings and kind of the key takeaways that staff heard. But we also do try and provide links and references to those previous meetings. I know you have limited time as well, so it'll always be a balance.
Go ahead. Yeah, a couple observations. So one of the things that I think we have to be cognizant of is I don't think any of us that I'm aware of have planning degrees, but every member of our staff has some kind, I think, of graduate degree. They have been trained in this and in the issue spotting. That doesn't make them flawless, but it creates a situation where, and like when a matter gets brought to us, I may spend 2 hours on that staff report for that one item, studying it, thinking of what I need to know that's maybe not in here. But the staff member who prepared it has spent 20 hours or 40 hours, more sometimes, with their professional background to flesh it out. And so one of the things I have to remind myself is just because it's not in the staff report doesn't mean staff hasn't already thought about it and dealt with it or dismissed it, whatever the situation is. And so one of the ways I try to show respect is to not assume that they missed it. But if I need to know what their thinking was, I try to couch it in those terms, right? You probably thought about this, but I didn't see it in the staff report. So, how'd you deal with this? The other thing that I think is sometimes helpful when I see a gap is I will gotta get these on. I typically read the staff report Saturday mornings. That's when I work on this. And if I see something I need to know, I'll send an email, usually to the staff member who wrote it with copies to Jennifer, the chair, saying, on Wednesday night, I'm going to ask this question. And be ready for it. And I don't do it often, but when I've done it, I find that it works pretty well because I do ask the question and there's an answer. And so that not only does it give staff a heads up, I think it also builds trust in the public, in the process, and in their confidence in staff, because it's right. Whereas alternatively, I asked that question, staff didn't know it was coming, they have to say, I don't have an answer.
I want to piggyback on both those comments and say that this is one of the things that I did as chair. We didn't have any transition, and I know you guys had a lot of like jumping right in, but one of the things I did in the chair meeting was anticipate the kinds of questions that we're going to get and ask staff to please come prepared with answers. And you may be doing that as well. The more that commissioners can communicate like Clark does with the chair and with Ms. Armour, the better that meeting's going to go and the better our meeting is going to be. Right?
So that's a perfect jump to the point Brian made before all of us were here, that getting questions into staff and then having the answers reflected back out to the commission might be
In
advance.
or as early as possible so that as people are. So what we've both been doing is we'll come with lists of questions or send lists of questions. And I was just sharing with Jennifer that Amy often would send the answers to those out to the whole commission rather than only to us. And the reason
It's required. Is that not happening?
it's
Not always.
not always.
It depends on the.
That's a problem.
Depends on the type of question, but in general, my preference, from previous experience would be to not only be providing it to all the members of the commission, but also have something that we publish online so that the information is commonly shared. And sometimes it can be a clarification that isn't necessarily something that's needed for the whole commission. And so we just handle it as an individual ourselves.
Okay.
So that would mean if those are being published, then that would mean we as commissioners have to be very careful about how we pose all questions,
One of the,
unless you're editing them.
And I think they edit them and combine them.
it depends on how we proceed with that. My most recent experience, we would put together an addendum report or desk item as we were talking about additional staff time. Of course, I want to be careful that we're not creating a whole new process, but the benefit of that is that we can combine or more generalize some of the questions that are asked prior to publishing.
Okay, so the takeaway I'm getting is we should pose our questions early.
And do it over the weekend, great, but I know sometimes we give you big packet.
And that we should do so in a way that we think will minimize your effort if the answers are going to be distributed more widely.
I guess framing the question with the idea that how might this be helpful to everybody and to the public?
And being transparent with the chair about it so that you can talk about it at your meeting if you need to. Like, if there's not enough time for you to get back to the commission, at least the chair can say, remember this, it's gonna come up. Please make sure you have an answer ready.
Don't forget the pre-meeting.
Yeah.
Been extremely helpful.
When is your pre-meeting? Fridays or Mondays?
Tuesdays.
Tuesday.
3.
Tuesday,
Oh,
correct.
Right, so, again, that ties back to, I try to send the email actually over the week. While it's fresh, so that when you come in Monday, you're reading your emails on the weekend, I'm sure. I'm hoping you're not always reading your emails. When you come in Monday, it's there, because Tuesday at 3 gives, if that's the first time staff sees it, that's a pretty short ramp. To not only find an answer, write something, put it out. So hopefully by Tuesday at 3, you're reiterating, these are the questions that have already come in, you're on it, right? And staff can say, yeah.
I mean, the most successful pre-meetings are those in which the answers are provided.
Yeah.
Right, rather than the questions.
They can all, I mean, I'm gonna add. Because yes, you're right, that's definitely the best. Option B is anything else that comes up that the chair and the vice chair tell you is gonna be a problem, needs to be in the presentation and you give it on Wednesday.
And that is another way for us to convey that information. Getting the heads up ahead of time of here's some issues, let's get ahead of it.
Yeah.
Let's have it in the presentation so that it's part of staff's presentation, or alerting when there's an applicant, alerting the applicant that this is going to be something that you're going to need to be prepared to answer at the meeting.
Not like directly related to this, but like one thing I found really helpful in the last packet was there was a whole thing that was like last time came to the PTC, here was the question posed, here's staff's answer, like having all those compiled was super helpful, like in one of the appendices. So I really like that.
And just to note, I have seen the questions that we posed show up with the presentations a lot lately. So that's happening
Thanks.
and is appreciated.
Getting the questions ahead of time is very.
Anything further?
B,
Anything further on 6 months?
Stuff.
Okay, let's talk about efficiency. 2B.
can I lead off with a couple ideas, things that, one of the things I observed, and it changes as the commission changes, but we are now prone to spend an unusually large amount of time on this concept of technical question, on the area of technical questions before public comment. And I'm as guilty as anybody. At least I was. Because we're spending so much time on it, and I think we set a PTC record maybe at the last meeting, an hour and a half of technical. And so sort of what I've come to personally is, because we can ask whatever questions we want after the public comment. And so what I'm decided I'm going to try to focus on is I want to ask the questions that may resonate public comment we've already received, where I think if we get an answer to that before the public speaks, that may answer a question they're going to ask and shorten their comments, which will shorten our meetings. And then other questions, even though they could qualify as technical, but I don't feel like they're going to impact public comment, I'm going to hold. And so that's just personally something I'm going to try to do my part to get us through public comment sooner. And then the other sort of back end thing that this is the issue of sort of getting it off our plate and moving it forward. And you've heard me do this or suggest this a number of times. I am comfortable in many occasions trusting staff, having been given adequate direction to carry something forward to council without us seeing the next iteration.
Same.
And we don't always do that. Sometimes we want it to come back. Sometimes it really should. But sometimes I feel like it didn't need to, because I think there was a way to get it moving forward and trust staff to do it our way, or to follow our direction. And so that's just another way to, I think, make the Palo Alto process more efficient by not having things come back to us as often.
Is there anyone, I need to phrase this so I'm not putting people on the spot, but what are some examples where we would not want to trust staff to do that? Do we have any, like, this was an instance and that's why I'm constantly vigilant kind of thing? And I don't have any of those, but I'm just wondering if anybody has heard lore of that, or like, because I agree, we for the most part, staff conveys our intentions pretty clearly to council. And I haven't personally in my, gosh, almost 7 years, experienced any problems with that. So I'm just wondering if anybody feels held back for any reason about that.
And if you're not interested in sharing it with the group, I would love to hear about it. If you do
It's a
have-
better way to, thank you, okay, because
Because that's the kind of thing that if there are trust issues, concerns, that's something that's really important for me to solve with. To help us.
I think there's an example of one where I asked for it. And it had to do with. It resulted in the El Camino retail notes coming back to us. And it was because it was buried in part of another piece of. I think it was in the HIP or AHIP, right? It was HIP, AHIP, retail preservation, and I wanted the HIP, AHIP to go on because we needed to do that for the housing element. Like we had to, and yet that one was like a big issue.
it was a good one to come
Okay,
back.
so that was a
it was
good-
a trust issue.
No, that wasn't a trust
good
issue.
call.
Okay, so I
It was a good balance.
right, no, so that one was where I was like, this needs to go on, and then when it got to council was also like, yeah, this needs to go back to the PTC also, because they
Yeah.
saw the same thing.
Good call.
Okay,
Yeah.
so then that's not an example that we're talking about.
Well,
All right.
it's a good distinction though, that wasn't a trust issue.
No, that wasn't a trust issue. That was like, this is a burning
deliberative
issue.
matter.
We need to address this. We don't
Yeah.
have time to address this. It's not agendized.
Yeah.
really. Yeah.
And it was a solution that balanced the urgency of the one part of the effort with the need to come back and have the further discussion. The other, that I was able to, that's an example where I, as staff, was able to take on that further discussion with you without having to use additional consultant time. It just kind of, all those different things circling together, it was a solution for that unique
I'm
situation.
trying to think, but like, have we been asking for things to come back to us?
I think this might be a change in how we've established our relationship. We've got a pretty high functioning group here, and I think we've built a lot of trust with Jennifer. And I think this is an issue that is worth clarifying, because there are times when we can trust. And I think we did that the other day, right? When we had some changes to a motion and we said, can you handle it? Because we've discussed it enough and we trust whoever, it was you as our rep perhaps. And that was a great, like, positive use of our time and staff's time. I hope it was a positive use of your time and not too burdensome.
It wasn't.
So that's a good example, but I don't think we've had any problematic. And that's why I asked. I don't recall any, but I don't want to assume that there's not.
Yeah, I'm reaching pretty far back into my first stint as liaison to council. So, this interacts with our relationship with council and the issues to talk about there. So in that, now I'm not recalling what the issue was, but the concern there was that what made it to council didn't capture the sense of the PTC's decision.
Oh,
And perhaps if it had come back to us, we would have generated something more explicit.
Hmm.
And my interpretation is that this was a judgment call while constructing the staff report for council. So it wasn't a trust issue so much as a communications failure. But that's not the issue that I think you're trying to capture here. That's something more about interaction with council.
I think it ties in really well with the other topic of the role of the PTC liaison and how the PTC wants to have that liaison serve. I think it is also that example from whenever that was, is a really good example where staff does try to summarize the main, in addition to the actual motion and recommendation, here are the topics and kind of why this was their the final recommendation. But with the need for brevity, sometimes some of that does get missed. We also have situations where, from a professional staff standpoint, staff's recommendation may continue to differ from the PTC recommendation. And so making sure we're laying that out clearly in the staff report. Or if there's new information that's received after the fact, then maybe we're coming back. Even if you didn't catch it.
I think for this reason, this is one of the reasons that we sometimes explicitly say in the motion, please convey this divide to council, for example. So that's one of the things that has happened before is, we'll have a 4-3 vote and the packet for council says, and the commission passed this.
Or three, which just doesn't
And
explain.
It doesn't say anything about what the issue is. That's probably, because I think that has happened while you've been on the commission. So I think, if in order to maintain the trust, in order to save the time, and that one of the things we're relying on you as a conduit to council on our behalf, like that's our function, and you're the conduit. If you can try to review it with that kind of authenticity in mind in terms of capturing relevant parts of the discussion and process, because if that's not included, even in a summary, then we just wasted 4 hours of our time and countless thousands of dollars of your time.
Yes.
And I would say that it doesn't
rare.
provide, it isn't supporting the council as fully as is intended, right?
Yeah.
Because they aren't able to spend as much time as you dedicate to some of these, since they're doing that. Plus,
So who reviews that part of the packet for council? Is that you?
in terms of a staff week, multiple layers.
But
But
I mean,
yes,
what person?
I am looking at all of them. The director reviews all of the council reports.
Who at our meeting of all of us? It's you.
That's me.
So do you think that you
I am
need any additional input from us? Or if you're not sure, do you feel comfortable reaching out to the chair?
Yes, as you have seen over this last year, when there is something that isn't clear, I will speak up and request clarification. I very much appreciate when there is something that there is an interest in being very explicit about. That is very helpful.
Okay.
But also there are times where it's okay to refer to the list of revisions or things to consider without having to go back and rehash them. And I will let you know if it is not clear to us.
I wonder if this relates to also the purpose of the PTC liaison, right? So maybe in terms of, it could be interesting for the PTC liaison to also review that, like kind of like not review, but kind of give feedback on the part of the packet that is like, PTC discussed this. And if the PTC liaison is like, actually, it'd be great if you incorporate this other component of our discussion, that could be part of the role for the agenda.
The liaison signs off on it.
Yeah, like that, I think that could be an interesting idea.
Well, add stuff that's not discussed. It would, as you have professional training, and I think that you're saying that would be easy for you to only include stuff that we discussed and, that was part of the public conversation. I think you can imagine, 10 years from now, when it's not you in that seat, somebody with less experience, perhaps adjusting how that they provide that feedback to some other end. So we need to think about how to make sure that whatever's included in the packet was transparently something that we have all heard and agreed to through either the motion or the discussion.
And that is why you have professional staff who are working to provide that summary. We're not gonna be perfect. And so from a staff perspective, I think my recommendation would be, take a look at what is presented in the staff report. And if there's more that needs to be added, then that's an option for the PTC liaison to join the meeting.
Right,
But-
I think that, to me, that is the solution. It's not to add another layer of dialogue before the council staff report can go out. I view the PTC liaison at the council meetings. The way I was trained when I first started here was, our job is not to speak for ourselves, but rather to reflect the whole of the action of the commission on the item, including the parts that me as the speaker was not in favor. Right, to, particularly to explain the no votes. Right, because they know what the no, yes votes.
Exactly.
And so that, I view that as my role, and so, the couple times a year when I'm the liaison, I read the staff report and I'm with that eye. That did they really adequately explain if it was
Where the discussion was.
Right.
Yeah.
And then my job at the council meeting is to explain, to provide that color that wasn't captured in the staff report. And to do it without throwing staff under the bus. Well, they missed this really important discussion in the staff report that you need to know about. There are more tactful ways to do it. And I'm prepared to do it. And the frustration that I've had a couple of times.
They don't
I've
call
mentioned this,
you.
right. And so that is the problem, is there needs,
That's
at
what-
every council meeting, there's a staff.
That's what I
A
was
staff
asked.
presentation and an applicant presentation and public comment. There needs to be, it needs to be automatic that maybe after the staff report, the PTC liaison.
Is asked if they have anything to add.
Right. And the
Yes.
answer is no, but I'm here to answer questions.
Exactly.
Well, I'm gonna suggest that the process that I had, this was before your time, Ms. Armor, but the person who was staffing would contact me before council and say, do you have anything to add? And that way they don't have to call me if we both agree it's adequate.
Well, and what I would also ask is that if we're sitting there, that you let council know, because council can't see who all is joining by Zoom.
Yeah.
Or might not be aware that we're sitting in chambers. So it's useful just to tell council, and we have our PTC liaison here if you have any questions of them. So that,
Yeah.
Because I've seen council like they hash over something and I'm like, woohoo! Like, we've done this work for you. I can tell you what the perspective is of the two, of the pros and cons.
It's interesting to see the different approaches. A couple of times I've spoken when acting as a liaison, I went to John first and said, I have something to say. And then everything happened.
Well, I've said, like, please let council know I'm here. And I know you guys are busy. You have a lot going on. So you
Sometimes it
forget,
doesn't get
right?
into-
It doesn't.
Yeah.
So what I find is sometimes I ping a council member just saying like, hey, just so you know, I'm here if you have any questions. Like, to make sure, like, but I don't know them all, so like,
Right, but I think
I think it's better if you can formalize it and sort of
Right,
say,
right.
like,
and it takes 10 seconds if the liaison says, I have nothing to add, but I'm here for questions.
exactly.
Because and then all 7 council members have seen it, they all are on notice that
Exactly.
we're there, they have a question, and it takes no time. So that's why I kind of like and I also think, I believe the council owes it to
I
the
couldn't agree
PTC.
more.
Well,
To give us that moment.
Yeah.
Since they're having us sit through that meeting, and they've already had us, pointed us to do the work that took hours. To give us that maybe 10 seconds or more.
I was furious at a last meeting where I'm like, oh my gosh, we have gone through all of this and they're sending it back to us. Are you kidding me? Like, she was like, do not send it, do not send it.
my favorite counter example though is one time we were gonna, we're very rarely unanimous. This was about child safety at the railroad
Yes.
tracks.
And they
And
totally,
they said, I could flip a coin, but I'm just gonna vote against.
well, so that's why I think it's useful.
our mayor.
to have- I know, it was
Not our current
infuriating.
mayor. Our current mayor would never do that.
It was infuriating.
It was infuriating.
But like, that's where it's helpful if the PTC has any inkling that this might be happening.
I was there, I was called
Oh,
on.
I know, but like,
And it was
so infuriating.
it was infuriating. But there's nothing, I guess what I'm trying to say is just the fact of being called on is not enough to affect the changes that reflect our work. So I find that staff reaches out to council. Council says whether they want to hear from us or not. We reach out to staff and say whether we want to speak to council or not. And if we're both no's, everybody saves time. That's my opinion. I know it's different for you,
So
and everybody can do their
in
own
that
thing.
situation, do you not show up for the meeting?
If I'm told that you are not needed, then I don't go.
But how does council really know before they dig into their dialogue?
Right.
That they might not have that they
Right.
might have, I mean, I don't think of every question I have for staff in advance,
Some
sometimes.
of our issues are not that kind of issue where they need, like, staff is very prepared and there is not something that has not been.
I'm pretty supportive of having this added to the process. It's kind of like, are there any public comments for this item? If no, we just move on. So like just adding it as a one-liner in the formal process. Like, and then I also think, not just speaking for us, but maybe this is something that if the ARB also had
Yeah,
a representative, I'd be like, the PTC liaison is here to answer questions. Do they have anything to add? Yes or no? Does the ARB have anything to add? Yes or no? And like, et cetera, for other potential boards and commissions.
But you don't have to be online if they have no questions for you.
But I
Well, I'm just being serious. Like, we have the technology. Anybody knows how to text and say, there's a discussion here, they want to know more about PTC, get online.
Yeah, so
It's not,
we've had situations in the past when consultants have joined for part of the meeting. And sometimes staff says, oh, consultants getting ready to go, anybody have any questions? And other times the consultant's just been gone. And then we realize we have a question.
Yeah.
And they're not there to answer. And
exactly.
so I think we have that same position. And so again, when
I did it for the first 4 years and then I optimized with staff and that's what we figured out. So,
yeah,
if you feel differently, that's fine. And if you want me to show up, I will show up. But
Call for those
But,
meetings.
but I'm on call and it works just
Okay.
fine for staff, so far, for council and for me.
I'm hearing a couple different things that I think are gonna be helpful moving forward. One is that I'm gonna work to try and have a standard statement
Mm-hmm.
in their presentation that PTC liaison is available. But before making that statement, we need to make sure that we're having some regular communication on whoever is liaison.
And have it in the press meeting too, because that's the key. That's what's happening for me. I don't know if you're aware of that, but the staff has been asking council if they want to hear from the liaison.
What do you mean the prep meeting with council?
Yeah,
Okay.
they have meetings too.
Yeah, no. I
So,
was just
yeah.
clarifying.
Yeah. So, I mean, as long as both of those things are happening, because if the one happens and they're like, yeah, I have questions, then the other should happen because the person will be there to answer them. Right?
I don't think they always know though. I mean, I just watched, I'm thinking of one particular thing where like curveballs were thrown in the middle. And I was thinking, gosh, I was the PTC liaison. I wasn't the liaison, but they didn't. And that's something that, in terms of Palo Alto process, and this puts a lot on staff to like think on the fly. But like, if you see it churning, you feel like PTC liaison is here and can speak to that.
Well,
Do you attend the council meetings?
Some of them,
Yeah, because I think,
but not all of them.
right, and that's what I think a lot of times,
Yeah.
Jonathan's there. But he
Yeah.
doesn't
But he
have all the.
also-
He doesn't
play
have the context.
Right, and so that's, again, that's why it's important to me that the PTCA liaison be sitting there
I agree.
and it just.
Fortunately, though, you kind of can't call on yourself, or can we?
If you are on Zoom, you can probably raise your hand.
Alright,
Um,
I mean, it's helpful, because I was just sort of always thought, okay, I'm supposed to be silent unless called upon, but if we have. This might be, that would be helpful.
they then would get to choose whether.
No, I understand that,
Right.
but
And you can say, if they did call on you, I can provide you the color from the PTC on that if you're interested. I
Right.
can say, no, we don't want to hear from you, or they can say, yes, please do.
That's for public, to Kevin's point, like, if you have something to say, raise your hand.
If it's in advance of their discussion.
discussion.
In the middle of their discussion, then that's.
But if it's a big concern, you can raise your hand for public discussion and say, I am the PTA's liaison or PTC liaison and I'm here. You can call on me if you need me later. And that's it. Like, it's not rocket science.
And I think that is the other side that from a staff perspective, I'm gonna work to try and build some of this into the structure as we go through the process on each project. But would also appreciate, as you are attending to what month you've got coming up as liaison, paying attention to it and reach out if you've got questions or if you know that you've had issues. Having that, if we've got kind of both sides working towards that goal, then it's less likely to fall.
Yeah, no, this is a good discussion, I think, because we were never all, this is a very useful discussion, because it's like, oh, you're the liaison, like, well, what do I do for? Yeah,
And even for those of us who've done it a few times, we're doing it differently.
Mhm.
That,
yeah, we're doing it
that's
differently.
instructive.
Well, and some of us get frustrated at how it's been going and have tried to try alternative approaches to see what's most effective. And I think that's something we should continue to do. And if we have experiences that we should share, that's something we can bring up in our discussion points at the end of meetings to say, there was liaison this month and it was again totally pointless. Probably wouldn't want to say that.
We'll talk on the phone something.
So like only because I see some of the same issues that we have here, I see them again at the water district.
Mhm.
So like at the water district, we defunded all the bailout stuff. We sent all the funding to Santa Fe. But there was no liaison that came and spoke to us and said, no, we really want that bailiff work. Which I don't think would have been this planning commission, but probably would have been city council with a liaison. But they didn't. So having no public comment, all those in favor, yep, and I don't think we have funding even now for the bailiffs.
Director said that it was a big deal.
What's it?
I think it was the director's fault.
It was someplace. But I mean, but the liaison thing goes a little bit further, even probably more so than us talking to city council. But is how do we coordinate with basically where a lot of our funding comes from, like dictating. So staff should, don't you want staff not to be there?
But like if staff's like, we need the funding, guys, they
Right.
need to tell council and do that. It's not something they should leave to
Right.
our availability. Yeah.
Through the chair, we actually started with talking about efficiency and kind of shifted to PTC liaison talk. It's been helpful. Very good conversation. Just wanted to remind that there may be some more on that, and we have about half an hour before that time, Jack.
So I think we would like to talk about technology.
Yeah.
Our expectation is that will be short. So let's see if we can wrap on efficiency first. See if there are any other
Ideas.
ideas.
I actually had
we should bring up.
a question about kind of, it's a very vague question about the purpose of the clarifying questions section. I think I totally agree with Bart's comment about if I saw in a public comment they're gonna ask something, I'm just gonna ask it, save this person some time. But I was also wondering, because our last meeting did have a lot of clarifying questions, kind of what the balance that we think is between a question that would go before an app. I know Bart said what he thinks, but I'm just curious what other people are thinking as well about the balance between these two sections. for certain questions?
Good question.
Well, we now have a lot of engineers and lawyers and scientists on the commission, so we're having more clarifying questions than we used. And I think perhaps it is worth discussing. What used to happen is we had like, I think, 2 lawyers and 1 planner. And they asked these kind of technical questions, and then we all got into our discussion. And now we're looking for data, we're looking for like justification for recommendations or theories, like we're finding ourselves wanting a little bit more. So there's 2 answers from my perspective to your question. One is staff recognize that this body is technical now. Like we want it every time. And if something is going to be used to justify a recommendation, we're going to look at it. And that wasn't the case before. So if that were to change a little bit in terms of what's presented, I think our clarifying questions would be minimized. And then for what's left, I think Bart phrased it well when he was like, if it's going to make the 300 people lined up to speak go down to 200 people or 100 people, worth clarifying. Or, so we have had ambiguous statements or confusing statements or typos between the 2 of you, the number of typos is just astonishing that you guys find. Like I didn't even notice that. I read it, my brain processed it differently. So, I think those kinds of things will help. That's what I would, because if you're the public, do you want to sit through 2 hours of our discussion about clarifying stuff? Probably not. You'd probably rather only say if you're interested in how the discussion continues, right? I don't know. That's my 2 cents. Anybody else want to weigh in?
Also on technical, I know I'm a really significant portion of the data-based questions, so yeah, that's kind of what I'm interested in, and I'd love to see more of that ahead of time. And I'll try to get those questions to you ahead of time as well.
I think it would also be helpful because that was sort of our venue to ask questions. We have as our norm that we're gonna ask the questions that are kind of a general interest or that definitely would completely kind of shift the discussion. Before public comment, but then before we all leap into comments, that we're gonna do another quick round of questions. I think that's helpful just because sometimes it's definitely things that are not gonna be of public interest, but are really
Interest to each
important,
other.
are important for us to level set to make sure we all understand the right thing before we make our comments.
Totally agree.
Right?
Yeah.
So like, and so we know that there's gonna be kind of a second round of questions.
Right.
I think it would shift
Yeah.
how we ask our questions, right? So,
Jennifer, is the setup that we do questions, public comment, and the discussion, is that required, or is that kind of just what we have decided to do?
So the core of the structure for the meeting is that we have a defined space when members of the public are speaking, or either having it's the applicant, it's any members of the public who want to speak individually, it's the applicant's closing statement. And any questions, say, of the applicant should occur during that defined time. But what I've seen in the structure of meetings is that we do have those clarifying questions up front. If there is a common misunderstanding of something that's going into the project, like that you've seen from the questions from the public, or something like that, clarification that's going to help everyone hear public comment in context, or help those who are making public comments understand that no, we're not going to force you to replace your fence. Kind of question. Those are very helpful up front. But there is absolutely capacity for questions throughout the discussion part. Though those should be focused on the staff, the consultants, right? It's those who are here rather than the members.
What
of the
about for
public.
the applicant though?
Applicant.
See, that was the other thing that I thought,
to not do that, yeah.
I could be misunderstanding. But part of the reason to like get all my clarifying questions in is because if the applicant's gonna say anything, or if I wanna ask anything of the applicant, I need to ask them during that section. I mean, this is where, and again, in a recent city council meeting, I saw the applicant just get up and and I was like, oh my gosh, you're not supposed to be talking then, right? So, that's also a question.
And so I'll start by answering to my understanding. And then
Maybe Albert has some.
I'll invite Albert to join us as well with anything he wants to add. So the official structure of the meeting, the applicant is a member of the public. And so, but I generally advise that the questions of the applicant occur after their closing statement, right? That it's that point, right as you're leading into the discussion, that you can get those questions of the applicant.
Got it.
And that even after the public comment period, including the applicant, has been closed, that if you have a focused question for the applicant, that still can be, through the chair, be asked to have them give a concise, the goal being to not open it up for a whole discussion with the applicant during the period of time where it really is supposed to be about the commission discussing the project rather than kind of a ongoing negotiation with the applicant.
Can I reflect back my understanding very concisely, because I think Albert's gonna chime in here, but so we want the public to be able to respond to the presentation. That's it. So everything that is part of quote unquote the presentation, that includes staff and the applicant and whatever
The staff report, all the
responses by other presenters happens, then the public, and then us. So if we get too much information from the applicant after, then the staff doesn't really have, I mean, the public doesn't have a chance
Doesn't have a
to
chance to
respond.
Right,
So it's a little touchy about how much comes after.
right.
So. I hope that was
So Albert Yang, do you
Yeah.
have anything?
So I guess I would generally support what Carrie just said, which is the purpose of having these clarifying questions, this round of questions before the public comment, is to get all of the relevant information out there before the public speaks, so that the public is informed. And so that's why we have that round of questions. And as Jennifer said, there's nothing stopping the commission from directing further questions to the applicant later. But we generally do want the public to have that information. That's why we ask it first. I think that's about it. Was there another question about this that I'm missing?
any other questions for Albert? I think you covered it. Thank you.
I'm supportive of concise questions and answers from the applicant. Not for this commission, but at city council, I did see one time where the applicant just started like kind of dialoguing about something beyond the statement of the question. And so it became a whole like back and forth. And I think that felt like a little bit strange. So I think having like, if we do ask any questions, keeping them really tight and really focused on specific.
And that is one of the difficult tasks to the chair to in managing the meeting. Having that role and responsibility to step in when needed to refocus.
Right.
Luckily for us, we haven't had very many instances where things have gotten out of control.
Knock on wood. Does that transition us to 1E?
Yeah.
One C.
2C, technology.
Yeah, should we
2C?
slow down- we should slow down technology.
Yeah, we should quickly
Let's
knock
talk a
that
little,
out.
let's talk a little bit about. So my thinking about this is pretty narrow, so I'm curious to see what everybody else is thinking. But, I would like to have the ability, to freely display information in the course of a discussion. Uh, Typically, where this comes up, Forrest, you've done this, several times. You want to be able to use Google Maps to look at an area. You want to be able to, circle an item on a plan or a site, diagram, to say, this is what I'm talking about. And we have some limited ability to do that, which, as far as I know, none of us had used before Kevin did.
Yeah, I was gonna say Kevin's one.
I've been on this commission long enough that we didn't used to have presentations. They were papers handed out at your seat.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, we didn't have our own screens for a long
Yeah.
time, right?
Mhm.
So,
So I'd like to see what opportunities we have to make more use of that. And diving down into the technology for a second, it occurred to me that since I get webinar, participant invitations, that I wonder if it's possible to log in and then have the moderator share a screen.
Yes, so, I know from my experience with the Architectural Review Board, they do actually use the drawing on the screen feature more often.
that would make
Uh,
sense.
They were.
Can be very helpful, so that we are all looking at the same, point, on the diagram. With the webinar participant, you could, log them on your own device. I think a lot of the functionality that you're looking for can probably be done through the screen, particularly.
So much the better. Yeah.
Right, in terms of drawing on things that are being shared that could be shared by staff. And part of the reason I would encourage us to try and keep to that in most cases is that if there are other materials that individual commissioners want to share, that I would strongly encourage that be shared with staff in
Mhm.
advance, so that everybody has a chance to see it in advance of the meeting, because different people process information in different ways. And we're already handling a lot kind of in the spot in the meeting with public comment that are being brought to be bringing a new resource in that others have not had the opportunity to kind of think about or look at in advance. Can mean that it has a little less kind of use. And so if things can go through staff so that then it is shared in advance, I think that's something I would encourage. And then I think just learning some of those things like sharing Google Maps and circling items on the screen, or other kind of things that you've seen done or wonder if we could do. We can look into that and see what we can figure out. We could do a test Zoom meeting to practice things. I think if you want to be the one in the driver's seat on Google's Maps, for example, then you probably would need to be logged into Zoom and be sharing your own screen.
I'm gonna push back on that a little bit. Like, staff needs to be ready to do that. We clearly need it. We've been asking over and over again, and why should the chair, he's got enough stuff to do, need to be driving that?
And as you have seen, we've been able to do that.
And I think that's the right way to go.
I'll jump in and say we can do a quick, like, 5 minutes before the meeting, we can all do a drawing exercise.
In this training. Yeah, we can-
That would, well, so that we don't spend a lot of time.
Yelling at you to do it?
Yeah,
Yeah,
yeah.
wasting time trying to figure out the technology, and if we all just knew how to like draw on it.
For the staff on the screen sharing, I kind of agree with that. I think it's a little bit too much for each person to be managing or the chair to be managing.
Yeah.
But I'm happy to do some kind of like Zoom, like just learning the tools.
Yeah.
Like maybe we'll say like 10 minutes before the meeting or
That'd
something.
be really nice.
That would be
Like
great.
or from like 45 to 55 when people could take a break and then come back for
Many of you were here for dinner ahead of time anyway. And
Right,
so it could just be something that.
we can just schedule.
So do we have norms that we want to establish about what kinds of things we can ask to share? I think Google Maps is good, the planning, like the zoning maps,
Zoning map, some of those
what
common resources.
other kinds of things,
Or the
we
staff
have
report.
asked sometimes to bring up, like the charter and other documents. So that staff has them ready, so that's what I'm just trying to think of, what kinds of things would we wanna ask?
Just sort of related to that, I mean, I'm remembering, it's a little to the side here, but, comments about data visualization, if they could be more sophisticated, and for some of your, comments about GIS and sort of mapping tools. And I noticed, when you talked about, early on, you mentioned time and technology, just like that, and so
Mhm.
that suggests to me that you feel like there may be some limitations that the staff has on technology.
Yeah.
I'm wondering if that's something we can address that would maybe feed into these other kind of richer data or mapping. You know, implementations.
Yeah, that staff has certain resources. We do have a GIS program that's also available online, other things like that. There are certain types of things we can put together. And other things we don't have access to.
I just want to hear, because
The
I've
online.
20 years teaching future planning professionals that I don't know if I'm listed all the cities that my students are at. And my job is that when they walk out the door of Stanford, that they are competent in basically data visualization.
Mhm.
And so I think my expectations might be a little bit different. None of my students are working at Palo Alto, but maybe if I reached out to one and said, hey, can you come and share and how we do, how things are done.
But not necessarily at the meeting, that's something, a conversation you can have with Jonathan and Jennifer and say, look for some cool stuff that you should consider as professional training that, the city can sponsor. And that I think as professionals, they need to get on the regular.
Professional
basis
development
anyway.
is always tough at
We
staff.
welcome ideas, professional.
I'm gonna add to the norms, cause I really like what you said there, any still picture that you have grabbed to put in a document, have it on hand, we're gonna dig in, that's what we wanna do. And honestly, if you're preparing a list for our clerk to be able to show, then share it with us as well, cause we can pull it up on our screens and get our answers sometimes without wasting valuable commission time.
Dovetailing that, resolution is a real issue. I mean, I have sort of pinched the Zoom
Real.
up to a point where I need to know what that street name is and I don't know.
Yes.
So I don't know if there are resolution standards,
In our
Yeah.
packet,
In the packet.
well, but
Yeah.
I mean, in particularly the digital version of the package.
right, the digital, well, exactly, so let's say. We have our printed packet and we're like, I need to see what that street name is, and then you go to the digital packet and you try and pinch into it, and it's like fuzzy because whatever the image is that's been added in there is not at the resolution that we
Right.
need.
So
Right.
print, okay, so printing resolution is 2 or 4 times higher than your screen. So if you're grabbing a screenshot, you print it, it's blurry. Just to let you know, so if you grab it like on a zoomed in, if you grab it from a PDF, for example, you can export it to a higher resolution. We can talk about that, but she's absolutely right. Both of them.
One thing I noticed, I just did a quick look through of the packet coming this week with the bike tunnel, and I noticed that whoever authored that report had like a really small diagram, but then also an appendix included a very big version of it, and that was super helpful. To be like, so in the staff report where a reference to the diagram is like, here's a small version if you care about the big picture, but also refer to appendix B if you want to see the whole
That's a
thing.
great idea.
So I thought that was really helpful.
Yeah.
So Sam is having trouble getting packets out to everyone because of email size limitations. Who's having that problem?
Who's getting bounced back from this now?
Gmail, and they also have a filter before forward.
So, who's There was a
Me.
HRB.
Yeah, I just didn't get it and didn't know if anybody else didn't get it.
But it got through to others.
In HRB, I think, Commissioner, remember Willis, I got bounced back from Willis.
I don't want you to trash my inbox with a gigantic attachment either, just so you know. So here's my suggestion. How this works is, and I do this because professionally I make very large files that I share with people for their inbox. And I link to a drive or a storage folder. And the email contains the link, and then the person can download it from that location. We know these are already posted on the website, so you can just send the link.
So that I think that is a question for the commission. With different levels of interest and comfort. Are you all comfortable just receiving a link rather than an attached document?
Yes.
Yeah, I guess a link anyways goes more. How does that sound? Like the link more big? And you're like, yeah.
Well,
it's good.
Let's get the full consent. Is this something, I didn't see you raise your hand.
Well, so here's the issue. I usually use the paper version, prepare for the meeting. And that's what I bring to the meeting is the paper.
We're not even discussing replacing it though.
No, but we are, because we're talking about at the end of that, in that paper version, there is a printout of a map. Right? And if we instead in the staff report are not going to actually attach the map, but just provide a link to it.
Oh, no. That's not what we're suggesting.
Well,
Because I still want the paper packets. We can vote on that too. But
We're talking about the email.
there's an email with an attachment of the packet, and that attachment
Right.
is large.
right. So
So-
if you're only saying the packet is going to look, the packet that we get it delivered is going to be exactly the same, except in addition to that map, physical copy of which is there, in addition to that, there's a link.
Two different deliveries, there's an email delivery and there's a paper delivery.
But yeah, but we're
That's
not
all
going to
we're
ask them to make two versions of the staff
No,
report.
hold on, stop. You're conflating.
I don't think I am.
Well, let me try. Let me try and convince you. Let me try and convince you, because we started talking about resolution of the printout.
Right.
Somehow, we also ended up talking about emails. These are two different activities that Sam does.
So maybe
All right.
I can rephrase my
Well-
question once
Let me finish, yeah. So one is, can we have higher resolution of the documents, images that are included in the printed document, so when it prints, you can read it. And all of us can read it. Okay, so that's one question.
Yes.
And then the concern was that may make the packet bigger. And so then we started talking about the email. When we attach the email version of the packet, which we also receive every time, how do we prevent that contradiction from preventing them from making the printed packet better? And the way I suggested was allow us to download the packet. You don't have to attach it in email.
Yeah, that's what I understood. So in
Oh,
the
okay.
electronic version,
What's the
there'll
problem?
be a link.
No. And in your email, there'll be a link.
That is the electronic version, the email.
No, the email has an attachment right now.
Yeah. So the question is, when you get the email from Sam
Yeah,
that says your packet is ready,
right. Click here.
that email
Right.
actually has a PDF attached to it,
It's embedded.
Right.
right? And so that makes the email much bigger.
But what
It also
actually,
turns it on.
what is making the email much bigger is not the text of your report. It's that fat image of the map that is attachment B. That's what's making your staff report use a lot of memory. And so what we're saying is in the electronic version, that digital version, we don't want to have that fat map.
No,
Instead, we want to have a link.
Maybe it's
No.
something different. So have you ever tried to download the packet from the PTC website?
No.
Okay, so when you download, you go to like PTC, whatever, and then
Yeah.
Yeah, good.
you go to PTC meetings, whatever, and then on the side, there's a thing that says like download.
Yeah.
Right, so you like click download packet and you get this big PDF. So basically, we would just replace what comes to you in the email instead of the whole packet, you just get this URL that click download.
There's three dots.
So Sam, last week, I think for the upcoming meeting, he sent us two emails. One was just a link
Mhm.
and the other was a PDF attached package.
Yeah,
So is the suggestion no longer email the PDF package,
Yes.
just email the link?
yes. Yes. So,
Got it.
and you can make that packet as huge as you want to, because we'll just all download it.
Sam, what are you gonna do with all your free time? Oh, wait, we gotta check with Sam. Is this part of your main job? So we don't wanna.
All right.
So, I'm gonna clarify one thing, just to make sure we're all on the same page. Sometimes when I get the website packet, I don't get the drill downs in one file. Are we still gonna get all of the entire thing that is in the printed packet
You
in one file from the website?
you got them like separately?
Well, like with council's packet, it's like 10 different,
Like all the attachments are separate.
where you have to click on.
I don't want that.
We don't want that.
No,
So as long as what you're directing us to with the link via email, which is very handy, thank you for doing that. I'm happy to get the link in a PDF, as long as that link is the same thing as the packet.
Yeah,
Okay.
you're okay with that?
yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, I get.
But the other thing is that I think that, so that solves that problem. I think that some of the staff aren't aware as they're preparing their individual reports, that whatever they're attaching as attachments in their report or images are just not high resolution. Yeah.
And that's one of the things that I, as a reviewer of those staff reports, can start looking
Okay.
for.
Thank you.
And get passed back to staff, the importance to make sure that the quality of those graphics is high enough. If we can't get it into the Word document of the staff report, then attaching it as a separate.
And we have like, Word is notoriously problematic on that. We can talk about it, but I wanna say, at least half of us are happy to provide tech support on that, because my eyesight's not getting any better, so I'm just saying. All right,
Good. That was useful. I think offer,
This is off again, further to the side, but just as we were talking about technology, and you said you have some
GIS.
GIS.
Yeah, graphic information.
I know that, like, not to sort of mention any particular vendor, but I know Peter Calthorpe has developed a GIS based urban planning software package. And I'm sure others have. I'm not sort of shilling for him. But it does occur to me that in terms of tracking everything, from whether we are removing trees or adding trees or anything, that it is GIS is like the DNA on which you can locate anything, whether it's an ordinance or a use or whatever. And I just feel like if that's not the present, it sort of ought to be part of our future, 100% to have that capability. And I'm sure, this is sort of state of the art for urban planning, and you could locate everything about that point on the map that applies to it. That would be amazing if they do that.
If there are online resources, please, that you are aware of, please let me know, and I'll add them to the list and share it out.
If we have a couple minutes after this, I can just show you the website. I'll load it right now. We'll throw it up on the screen. It takes
After,
10 minutes.
also to just share an old timer on this commission response. When I started, we weren't even using GIS, we had a custom Palo Alto thing, and
I've seen that.
we have advanced.
All right then.
so our public facing interface to the GIS is very limited.
Oh, yeah.
Yes.
Now. I have requested GIS queries from staff going as far back as 2013. And they've all been great, but it's just not generally accessible.
Yeah.
So,
because we have to be cautious with some of the data.
so for the stream side Clover reviews, I used my backpacking topo map application. So I could see where all the bank, walk through all the top of bank. So those things exist, and in some forms are even free. So we can explore some of that as well too. Perhaps we have reached a good stopping point.
Mhm.
Thank you, everyone, for such a great conversation today.
I also just want to take the time to say, like, we really appreciate what staff's doing already. These are
Yes.
just like
Mhm.
additional things that we'd love to see also.
It'll make us even happier when we are interacting with you guys, and perhaps that will help some of our interactions.
And I do invite offline interactions as well. Please do reach out to me with questions, comments, at whatever point they come through. You know,
Yeah, I like the coaching calls.
we have a lot going on, but supporting you is one of my main tasks, so.
Thank you.
Thank you all. Thanks
Thank you.
for being here, Albert, and
Yes, thanks,
Thanks, Albert.
everyone. I'm glad you all make time,
Bye, everyone.
just going to go to Parsons. It was very valuable, and I hope, we can do another, for more topics in the future.